Two industries, both build machines humans depend on. One of them assembles a car in about 18 hours. The other can take 2 years to finish a building, using methods that, in places, haven't fundamentally changed since scaffolding was made of wood instead of steel. Construction is one of the largest industries on Earth, worth somewhere between $11 and $16 trillion a year globally, depending whose estimate you use. It is also one of the least digitized. And here's a number that should stop you. Over the last 2 decades, construction's productivity, how much gets built per hour of labor, grew by roughly 1% a year. Manufacturing, over that same stretch, grew at more than 3 times that rate. Construction isn't just slow to change. By the numbers, it has barely changed at all. And right now, it's running into a wall. It needs to build more, faster, with fewer people willing or able to do the work. This is the story of what happens when that wall meets artificial intelligence, told honestly, without pretending the robots have already taken over. Here's the uncomfortable math the construction industry is facing. By 2025, the large majority of U.S. construction firms, well over 90% according to industry hiring surveys, reported real difficulty filling open positions. In a single month in early 2024, there were roughly 456,000 unfilled construction jobs in the U.S. alone, the most in 2 decades. It's not a new problem either. It's getting worse on a clear trend line. Construction job vacancies in the U.S. roughly doubled between 2017 and 2023, according to McKinsey's analysis of labor data. The OECD's research points to why this is happening. Construction, alongside sectors like healthcare and hospitality, faces severe and persistent labor shortages tied to strenuous working conditions and comparatively demanding physical work, not a temporary blip, but a structural feature of the industry. Meanwhile, the workforce that is there is aging out. The median construction worker in the U.S. is pushing 42, and a large share of today's workforce is expected to retire within the decade. So the industry faces a question with no easy answer. How do you build more with fewer people without cutting corners on safety or quality? That question alone is dragging construction, kicking and screaming, into the AI era. But it's not the only number driving this. There's a second problem hiding underneath it. Between 2000 and 2022, global construction productivity improved by just 10% total. That's 0.4% a year. Over the same period, the overall global economy improved by 50%. Manufacturing improved by 90%. In the world's most advanced economies, the US and Europe, construction productivity has barely moved, and in some measured periods has actually gone backward. Why? Part of the answer is investment. Construction companies have historically spent less than 1% of their revenue on information technology, roughly a third of what industries like aerospace and automotive spend. Part of it is standardization. Off-site, factory-built modular construction, the closest thing construction has to an assembly line, still makes up less than 4% of U.S. housing stock. McKinsey Global Institute has estimated that if construction closed this productivity gap with the rest of the economy, it would add an estimated $1.6 trillion in value to the sector every year. So this isn't just a story about not enough workers. It's a story about an industry that hasn't figured out how to get more out of the workers and the time it already has, which is exactly the gap artificial intelligence is starting to move into. Not with robots first, but with something much less cinematic. Better planning. The first wave of AI in construction isn't a robot on the site, it's software in the office. Before a single worker sets foot on a job, someone has to plan an enormous amount of physical complexity. What gets built in what order, how materials get staged, where scaffolding goes, and when it needs to come down. That scaffolding example is a good one. Traditionally, it's planned largely by hand, engineers working through drawings, load calculations, and access requirements, often taking days for a complex structure. AI-assisted planning tools can now take building data and help generate or optimize those plans, compressing work that used to take specialists days into a fraction of the time. It's not glamorous, there's no robot dog in this part of the story, but it's arguably the most important shift because it proves something specific. AI doesn't need to lift a single beam to change construction. It can change the thinking that happens before anyone picks up a tool. Here's where it gets more interesting. A modern job site can be full of cameras, drones, wearables, and 3D scanners, all of them constantly generating data about what's actually happening versus what was supposed to happen. That turns a construction site into something new, a place where AI can, in principle, continuously compare the as-built reality against the as-planned design, flagging missing work, safety violations, or deviations from the plan, often before a human supervisor walks the site to notice. It's worth being precise here. This is early stage. Industry reporting on this technology frames adoption as being in its early days, not a finished transformation. Most sites are not fully monitored in real time yet. But the direction is clear. Construction is turning from a place where information lives in someone's head and on a clipboard into a place where information is data. That matters more in an industry with a labor shortage, not less, because it means the few experienced supervisors a company does have can watch more of a site than their own two eyes would ever allow. If the job site is generating all this data, someone still has to act on it, and that's where wearable AI comes in. Smart glasses being tested on construction sites aim to put instructions, documentation, or safety alerts directly into a worker's field of view, without them stopping to pull out a phone or a folded-up drawing. The goal isn't to replace the worker's judgment, it's to get them the right information at the right moment with both hands still free, which matters enormously on a physical, safety-critical job site. Think about that aging workforce from Act 1. A worker with decades of experience nearing retirement is exactly the kind of person you want spending less time flipping through paperwork and more time doing the one thing software still can't replicate: judgment built from experience. Actual machines moving on their own on a construction site. Robot dogs are already being trialed, not as builders, but as mobile data collection platforms, walking a site, capturing images and sensor readings, and building a digital record of its condition. There's also serious engineering work happening on autonomous material transport. And here's the part the hype usually skips. The researchers who built that system say, in their own paper, that it isn't ready for the real chaos of a job site yet. It doesn't yet adapt to changing terrain in real time, and the paper is explicit that navigating shifting ground, dust, and unpredictable layouts is still an open problem, not a solved one. This is one preliminary workshop paper about one prototype vehicle, not a settled industry standard. Compare that to a factory robot, which operates on a flat floor it already knows, in a building that doesn't change shape while it's working. A construction robot might face mud one day, stairs the next, and a layout that's completely different from the week before. So the honest headline isn't "Robots are building our buildings." It's "Construction robotics is real, it's early, and it's fighting the exact same problem the rest of the industry is fighting: an environment that refuses to sit still and refuses to standardize." Before this starts to sound like a solved problem, it's worth slowing down. Less than 4% of US housing has ever been built using modular, factory-style methods, the single closest thing construction has to manufacturing's controlled environment. That number hasn't moved much in years. The autonomous robots you saw in Act 6 are, by their own researchers' admission, not ready for unpredictable terrain. The computer vision monitoring in Act 4 is described by the industry itself as early stage. Most job sites today still run on some combination of paper drawings, radios, and a supervisor's memory. None of that means the technology is fake or overhyped into nothing. It means the timeline is longer and messier than a highlight reel of robot dogs and smart glasses suggests. The industries that successfully automated, retail, manufacturing, agriculture, didn't do it in one dramatic leap. They did it by removing friction one process at a time over decades. Construction is at the very start of that same curve, not the end of it. So here's the actual thesis, stripped of the hype. Construction isn't adopting AI because it wants fewer humans on site. It's adopting AI because it cannot find enough humans, and because a modern construction site generates more information than any person or clipboard can process manually. Every piece of this story, planning software, site cameras, smart glasses, robot dogs, autonomous carriers, is really the same move made 5 different ways. Take something a human used to have to notice, remember, or calculate by hand, and let a machine hold that information instead, so the humans on site can spend their attention on the parts of the job that still need a person. That's a much less dramatic story than robots will build your house, but it's the one the evidence actually supports, and arguably it's the more interesting one because it's happening to an industry that touches nearly everything else humans build. So don't watch this space expecting a construction site with no people on it by 2030. That's not what the evidence supports. Watch it for something more interesting, an industry that's existed for thousands of years, forced by a very modern problem, a shrinking, aging workforce and 2 decades of flat productivity, to finally start turning its oldest habit into its newest advantage, using everything a job site can tell you instead of relying on someone remembering to look. The buildings will look the same. What's changing is everything it takes to get there. If you had watched the entire video, you have surely liked the video. You should not miss the next video. Please subscribe and hit the like button.